Former chair.
Well, then I call this meeting to order of the Monroe County Public Safety Local Income Tax Council. First item on the agenda is roll call and introductions. If someone wants to do the roll call.
Typically it's chair.
Typically be me, okay. Well, I'm Scott Oldham with Ellisville Town Council. Go this way.
Isabel Piedmont-Smith, Bloomington City Council.
And we'll go this way.
Kate Wilkes, Monroe County Council.
Courtney Daly, Bloomington City Council.
Andy Ruff, Bloomington City Council.
And we'll move online to Councilor Henry.
David Henry, Monroe County Council.
And Councilmember Otto. Okay. And I believe that's everyone, correct? All right, now we're going to move to election of officers for this year, election of the chair, actually. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Councilperson Piedmont-Smith.
Second.
Any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll now vote. We'll go with Councilmember Piedmont-Smith first.
Yes.
Yes for me.
Yes.
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 Gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes.
Over to you.
Thank you. Let's do introductions of the people who are not on the committee but are joining us today. So we'll start with Sophia.
Sophia McDowell, Clerk's Office.
Lisa Lehner, Council Attorney.
Christine Chang, Council Researcher.
Jessica McClellan, City Controller.
Sarah Taylor, Monroe County Central Dispatch.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Okay, so we have an overview of local income tax rates, revenues, and distributions. Controller McClellan, would you like to speak to that?
Yes. Let me bring up the packet so we can talk about the same thing here. Let's see. All right, on page 13 of your packet is the certified income tax distributions for 2025. And currently, dispatch is being funded with $2.7 million from local income tax. The total dispatch budget is the blue spreadsheet below that. The city portion of that budget is $4.3 million. So I actually didn't do the math right here, but the part that's not covered by PSAP 2025 PSAP lit is being covered by city reserves in the PSAP fund. So PSAP lit does not fully cover the dispatch budget. We're using city reserves, and that is a funding source identified in the interlocal agreement for dispatch, that the city and the county will use their reserves to fund the dispatch center. And we do have significant reserves, and so last year we decided to do that.
And that's reserves in the PSAP
Yes,
fund.
only reserves from PSAP lit collected over previous years.
Do you happen to know the balance?
The balance of that fund?
Yeah. If you don't.
I do, in general. So the county fund is in the range of $2.5 million, and the city fund is, let's see. Sorry, I'm not getting to the right thing very quickly. I can look that up while you guys discuss other things. And then I just wanted to let you know that the 2026 certified lit for PS lit, that doesn't come out until August 16th. So what we do is we estimate what we think PS lit might be, and then we estimate what our percentage of PSAP that we would like to take from PS lit, what we would like that to be, and then we get an estimated amount of PSAP revenue that we have to work with for 2026. And that's not something that you have to decide in this meeting, but I just want to, but that's where we're headed. And in the next meeting, we'll also kind of go into more detail with that spreadsheet and percentages. And we have to wait until our next meeting because we may have units use this application that we're discussing today to apply for funding. And so if this body decides to grant funding to other units, that will also affect how much PSAP lit we have to spend in '26. And so that's why we're not deciding that today, but it is coming down the road.
Ready for questions?
Yeah, I'm done.
Yes, are there questions for Controller McClellan? Yes.
Can you speak a little bit to the effect that what SB1 became, this phases out in '28? So what happens to those reserves? Do they get washed into the general fund? Do they stay within a new creation of a lit fund, or how does that work?
That has not been made clear yet. That is exactly our question too.
Okay.
So for everyone else in the room, SB1 abolished the Monroe County Local Income Tax Council. It then would abolish this committee. It abolishes all the different buckets of lit. There will be no PS lit, no ED lit. It's just city lit and county lit. And I think that we need to find out what happens to our PSAP reserves. And then the big question is, how do we fund the dispatch center with an interlocal going forward? And that we'll also not decide at our next meeting, but it's a conversation coming down the road.
And this is in 2028 that this would,
Or 27?
It's 27.
Yeah.
The city council will vote on the city rate in 26 for the new lit to start in 27, I believe.
So it starts at 27, not
Yeah.
voting in 27 for 28.
Correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions?
yes.
The PSAP budget you mentioned is that the 2.781 million?
Yes, PSAP lit revenue in 2025 is 2.781 million.
And that does not cover the PSAP 2025 budget?
Correct, about half,
Okay.
a little more than half.
Okay. Only half, okay.
Yeah,
So that's the PSAP distribution component, but there's more revenue coming in.
that's a very good question. What is the county? The county contributes to this budget. I didn't mention that. The first page of the packet with the blue spreadsheet, it has the actual total budget of the dispatch center, including the county's portion, is 5.1 million. And the county's portion is on there in these two little purple line items, communications contract and instruction, and those come from the E911 state fund. And that's a portion of the money, let me see if I can get this right. I think it's the portion of the money that telecommunications providers pay into that fund for, as part of their contract to support 911. And it goes to supporting dispatch, which answers 911 calls.
Is there any,
Information about the stability of that revenue source?
I know that's kind of outside the
Yeah,
purview, but
and now I'm thinking, where would we get, I would say there should be. There's an E91 board. Maybe that would be the place
Yeah,
to
okay.
start a state board that is actually run by the state treasurer's office.
I just feel like we can't count on anything without
Yeah.
verifying
Yeah.
at this point, so I
Yeah.
just.
Agree. Yeah,
thank you.
yes, you're welcome.
I have one additional question. I apologize. And this is a question for, I guess, clarity as opposed to argumentative, so I'll start there. So city and county have reserves off the PSAP fund, correct?
Correct.
That originates from the PS Lit fund.
Yes,
So
they're
where-
they're pure PSAP dollars.
Okay, but again, those are coming off of the monies that this committee has set aside over the years to fund the PSAP.
Yes.
Okay, so what then are Ellettsville and Steinsville's reserves off of that? Because it comes off the top. And with all certified shares, there should be a four-way split, beginning on our percentages, as opposed to a two-way split.
Yep, Ellettsville and Steinsville, they do get PS Lit. Oh, it's because only the city and the county are eligible for the PSAP distribution because of the interlocal agreement is only between the city and the county.
To run the dispatch.
But it,
To run the dispatch,
but you guys dispatch for Ellettsville and Steinsville too, right?
they dispatch for Steinsville and Ellettsville as well.
I think that
And that's taken off the top of the total PS lit rate to fund dispatch first, before the distribution then occurs. So then if, I would argue, if there is then reserves coming off the top, there should be an Ellettsville and a Steinsville reserve column as well. Not that they'll go for anything other than the PSAP, but in all clarity, it should be a four-way split in what's in reserves rather than a two-way split, because again, those were reserves that were set aside off the top of the tax. It's not gonna be much,
No, I'm just,
particularly in comparison.
PSAP, I will just, also just for clarity, PSAP funds can only be spent on the dispatch center.
Right. And I guess where I was going with that
Yeah.
is that, and again, for clarity rather than argument, if the city has borne the total burden out for their reserves, should it then not be a four-way split across all four categories, as opposed to one entity bearing the brunt of using their reserves in place of
Oh, I see what you're
everybody
saying.
else? So for clarity, what are those four columns? Again, knowing Ellettsville and Steinsville are gonna be much less than what the rest of them are. But I don't want 20 years from now, somebody goes back and go, wait a minute, time out, where'd all that money go? Particularly if it gets washed back into general funds later.
Yeah.
Which I hope it doesn't. A follow-up question to that for me, for the group, is do Ellettsville and Steinsville pay anything to dispatch?
Yes, off
Oh,
this PS lit. because
They pay PS Lit.
It was
Okay.
originally
That
thought,
was not clear to me.
well, it was originally constructed, that PS lit, or the PSAP would be funded out of PS lit first before we did anything else. And that money then comes off the top, otherwise it would be revenue split four ways based on the formula under law.
Yes, and it originally, and then after PSAP comes off the top, then PS Lit is split four ways.
Right.
I'm sorry, just for my clarity, Ellettsville pays some, on an annual basis, pays something to
Nobody pays anything except through
through
PS
Lit.
lit. And then what is chose to be funded, like they have the certified PSAP, as you, I just looked at, those monies, those only come to the county because the county is the recipient of those dollars from the state. There's no mechanism for the city or the town or the other town to receive those monies.
Right.
So, I get it's complicated. I just don't wanna see one of us absorbing something and in all reality, it means nothing
Yeah,
for now.
for now.
But if it all gets washed back, or if it all gets moved someplace else, then we're gonna have a lot of arguments in the end that I'd rather address now while we're in the formative stage, rather than doing it later when we're trying to play catch-up ball. If that makes any sense at all to everybody.
It does. I think that, I just obviously don't,
The owl hanging upside down is hilariously distracting. I'm sorry.
We're waiting for it to fall, but yeah.
Right, it's, I forgot my point, I was so distracted. That's ridiculous. If things are going away in terms of buckets of lit, and we're still going to have, an income or a revenue source directly related to this amount, this levy, this, tax. So our internal budgeting could still, it says wash into general fund, but if it did that, I assume that you would set up specific funds.
Well, see, that's something
And
that
track.
you never anticipated from the state was, we're funding this off at the top, so it's an equitable split amongst everybody. So what happens when this committee goes away? You can't fund it off the top of our whole, when you roll them together as public safety lit and economic development lit, because we'll have 3 or 4 separate versions of that, so you can't fund it off the top of those. So how do we
We'll
then
still
do
have
that?
a percentage,
We'll have to have interlocal agreements, I guess.
There won't be a percentage
there won't be.
dedicated to dispatch.
Yeah. So again,
tags.
that's,
And if Ellettsville, and then it'd be good to have an interlocal that includes all of the units that that dispatch supports.
well, yeah, and again, even the ones that are not municipalities
Exactly.
are being supported because they're a taxing entity amongst themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
So we'll have to address that at some point,
Mhm.
or at least contemplate what we're gonna do.
Well, is, Scott, as the head of Ellisville Town Council, can you find out if there are PSAP reserves there?
No, because they
No.
would be with this committee, just like cities is and the counties is. It's coming off of this committee, and because the city manages the dispatch center for the county and Ellisville and everybody else.
Oh, because it's the PSAP part,
Right.
not the shares, yeah.
Yes, PSAP only comes to the city and the county, and it can only be spent on the dispatch.
So who
And-
would know that?
See, but going down the road, I mean, when we start looking at, for want of a better term, user fees to set up dispatch. Okay, so now Monroe Fire is gonna have to start kicking in substantially because they're now the bulk of the county, other than, you know, the municipalities for emergency services. What are we doing about the ambulance service? Because they're a private entity. Are we dispatching for them for free? Or are they gonna have to start
Right.
paying?
Exactly.
All of these things are questions that I don't think the state really anticipated when they contemplated doing away with PS-LET and economic development, pushing them together because there's no mechanism for us to skim off the top as we're doing right now.
But it may make the whole process a little bit more equitable to fold those people into the, to the revenue sources,
Right.
because you are supporting all of those entities.
Then the question becomes, however, what if you have a municipality who can't afford it?
Right. Who supplements.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, I'm just throwing questions out there that we're gonna have to address at some point.
But this is the PS Lit committee. This isn't the dispatch board. I just want to point that out. Like, who does make that decision? Maybe it's a different committee. It could be.
Well, 'cause
And
this
it could be the
committee will
same people in this
be
room,
obsolete,
but
yeah.
because this could go away. It could be the same people in this room, but I think it may be a different committee.
I'm just asking because we at this point not control, but are responsible for the reserves that are going into those funds. It seems like we're missing two funds that there should have been
Yeah. Yeah, there
donations
should
or
have been.
remnants put into those.
So would the public safety distribution, the PSAP distribution for Ellisville and Steinsville, so the 268,000 and the 1,300, would those have gone into what the county received?
No, they go directly to those entities. Oh, I don't know where,
But-
no, because like saying the reserves, so say we set aside $1 million, I know the number's wrong, for dispatch, but they only spend 700,000 of it. What's been happening is 150 has gone to the city and 150 has gone to the county as reserves. Well, what are the other two entities? Where are their reserves? Because they push money into this pile to begin with as well. So it should have been based on that percentages, so the city's 50%, the county's 40%, Ellisville's 10%, Steinsville's 2%, should have received in silos so we could track it easier over the years. But no one ever thought that it would matter. Now all of a sudden it matters.
Yeah. Is it 50-50 between county and city? Doesn't look like it. I don't think
No,
so.
not on
No,
the
it's not.
percentages.
So,
What's supposed to happen is the city is supposed to receive all of the dispatch, or all of the PSAP, because we have the majority of the expenses. I mean, it's not our money, it's still just lit. And we get the money so that we can pay all the bills, for all the we have all the salaries, we have all the expenses. Just because this interlocal decided it would be easier that way, instead of really splitting it 50-50 and asking you to pay half the people and you to pay half the people, and then there being this argument about, well, who dispatches for who. So we tried to get that out of clear up that issue, and then have all of the lit revenue come to the city. I don't know why the county has a balance in the PSAP fund, because I always thought that all of the PSAP was supposed to come to the city. We spend what we need to, and then whatever we don't spend stays in the PSAP fund, and then we always share that information. It's in the interlocal. We share that information with the county every year, how much did we spend,
Mhm.
what is our reserves, so that all the players know what the reserves are.
Which would make sense,
Yes,
yes.
Just to, I don't have the entire answer as to why the county has that, but I believe it has to do with the county being responsible for some of the supplies capital kind of expenditure as opposed to the operations expenditures, so that
okay,
I know that in the past we've had those discussions on council.
yes. And things have changed over time. They aren't now like they were when this started. So I think that what you're saying does sound familiar, but I don't know the details because it was a long time ago.
Yeah, same.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I didn't even want to bring that up because I didn't want to like cast aspersions on the county that you have money that you shouldn't. But the way it's working now, it doesn't entirely, doesn't seem like the county should be keeping PSAP money. It should all come to the city to pay for the dispatch center that we all use. But that's also not something that isn't really an issue. It's not an issue. It's just, I'm probably just confused.
Yeah, and I don't know the answers to that. I don't feel like, I mean, obviously it can only be spent on
Yeah,
PSAP.
that's
so,
why it's not an issue. It's fine.
Yeah.
It can only be
We should
spent on the
probably
dispatch.
clarify some things.
Again, I'm just worried at the future, what happens then? To me, it's irrelevant right now.
Yes,
And it's irrelevant, quite frankly, in the future to me, but to somebody else that may be relevant.
yes.
So things to clarify as we move along to the post PS Lit phase. Now Jessica, there was an additional distribution of PSAP funds, right, or PS Lit funds?
Only of PS Lit. The county said that the supplemental lit wasn't in our budget for dispatch and that they would keep it. That's what I was told, and that's why we didn't get it.
But we got certified shares.
We got PS Lit and we got certified shares and we got ED Lit. We just didn't get PSAP.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that everybody on the committee is aware that there was an additional distribution for PSAP. It all went to the county. Do we know how much that was?
$215,685.
And so that's not appropriated, right?
Correct.
That goes into the reserves.
Correct.
So just something to keep in mind. How do those supplemental distributions come about?
Every county lit has a trust fund with the state because they're collecting income taxes after they estimate what your lit is going to be, and sometimes the income taxes that they collect come in at more than what they estimated. They keep all that extra lit in a trust fund, and when the trust fund gets above 15% of a certain balance, which is a certain percentage of your city and county, blah, 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 then they distribute it to you as a supplemental distribution to keep the trust fund balance low or under a certain threshold.
I see. And so the certified shares, like the city got almost 1.2 million in certified shares, that's also not appropriated, but available for appropriation this year, right?
Correct.
Something to keep in mind for city council and county council, because I'm sure you all have distributed shares in Ellettsville as well. Any other questions for the controller on this? Okay, well, let's move on to hear from Sarah Taylor, Director of Civilian Operations with Central Dispatch, on how the expenditures are going and whether there are big plans that will need investment next year.
We are on track with our spending for this year for what we projected from last year. We had a lot of big projects that are happening this year, which increased the budget significantly for 2025. We're replacing 22 of our consulates in the radio room. That helps us still communicate with everyone in the field if our landline connection were to go down. And then we need to replace our second UPS. That's a glorified surge protector for all of our equipment to the generator. When we're thinking about next year, we don't have a lot of those huge expenditures. There's not huge equipment that we need to replace quite yet. So while we do see the pay likely, the personnel pay is going to increase due to the city's new pay structure, we do have some contracts that are falling off or significantly decreasing because we are not having these large capital expenses, or because the first year of the contract was much more significant because we had a GIS portion or some other portion that needed replacement in that first year. All of our contracts are going to be in the second year or farther along than that. I'm speaking kind of in generics, not being real specific today because the Dispatch Policy Board has not met to approve our proposed budget. That's going to happen on June 26th for a special session. At our next meeting, I'm happier to get more into the nitty-gritty and detailed of what Dispatch's needs are for 2026.
Great. Any questions for Ms. Taylor? How are you as far as having positions filled? Are they, I know that last year we had many vacancies. Is that improving?
It is not improved yet, unfortunately. We still have about the same vacancy rate as last year. We are focused on filling our dispatch supervisor roles that have historically been vacant since those FTEs were allotted, I believe 3 or 4 years ago before my stint here. Those positions are open. We've got a training supervisor position open internally and 3 dispatch supervisor positions open right now, and we hope to fill those really quickly within the next month or 2. Once we address those supervisor positions and get those filled, then we will open another telecommunications process as well for the dispatchers.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's been hard to get and keep employees.
It's a national problem, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's a difficult job. Any other questions? All right, thank you for that update. We can move on to review of the guidelines and application form for potential applicants among emergency service providers that are not funded by county, city, or Ellettsville governments. Lisa, do you want to?
Public is. Did you
Oh, I'm
want to
sorry.
accept any public comment?
I forgot the
at this
little
point?
asterisks.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity for public comment on the short report from Ms. Taylor on the central dispatch expenditures. Would anybody from the public want to comment on that topic? There's nobody here in the McCloskey room except for cats. Thank you. Any hands raised online?
Looks like there's some questions maybe in the chat.
Is there a question in the chat?
I think that was for an item that was not public comment,
Okay.
but you can check it out.
That's the AI.
Oh. No, this is Eric. Oh.
So he asks, how will the city and county coordinate in the ramp up on the repeal of PS lit designation? Okay, we did talk about that somewhat. Further, how will the 2008 effective combined lit structure and per municipality apportionment requirements tend to and influence the collaborative fiduciary needs, such as dispatch? Yeah. Those are big questions that will need to be addressed.
Who is that? Eric Host.
All right, but I don't see any hands raised to make public comment on the Unified Central Dispatch expenditures. So we can move on to review of the guidelines and application form for other emergency service providers. The form was in the packet. Are there did anybody notice anything that might need to be revised, other than the dates and Stephen Lucas's contact information?
My recollection is last year we did not have applications. Is that correct?
I think so.
We didn't have any submitted, we have to allow them to do it, no one
Yeah.
chose to submit.
And my hazy recollection is that people did not submit because the writing was pretty clear that we were not having a lot of extra to distribute. So relative to that, are we in the same situation?
Personally, I would say yes, because everybody else who's able to submit also has their own tax-supported entity to go through to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the form, just on the top of the second page, it says, the committee reviewed its guidelines and made changes, reflecting changes made to state law, so I guess we can take that out. Since we're just keeping whatever that was. And then I wanted to double check whether the September 1st deadline is still accurate in that last paragraph.
I believe that's still accurate.
Okay. So that does put us in a position to really have to estimate, because we won't have the numbers until August 16th. But that only leaves 2 weeks to have this committee meet and have the members of the tax council approve any changes. So really, we need to make a decision before we have those numbers, as usual. Okay, well, I didn't see anything to revise here. Anybody else? Now, the meatier part of this is the guidelines, which start on page 11. And this may be, Counselor Wiltz, what you were talking about, that maybe they looked at this and were like, yeah, it doesn't look very promising, because we do talk about number 2 there. The committee will only consider funding expenditures for demonstrated urgent one-time emergency needs. So that's pretty limiting. And then combined with all these other guidelines, it is rather narrow, I think, what these guidelines would have us consider. But we're here to talk about the guidelines, so I'm open to.
Sorry.
How much latitude do we actually have
Right.
in modifying our guidelines?
These are our guidelines, I believe.
Yeah, and this is just what this council has done from, honestly, first year on. I'm not sure how many years that is now. Is that we saw, I think the first year, what we have 10 applications, and it all seemed to revolve around one individual topic at the time, which was SCBA's. So we decided to fund those because those were an urgent, life-threatening priority. But then we were also getting things like, oh, I want a pickup truck, or I want a trailer, I want to. It got into kind of wish list items that we had to pick through. Versus at the time, the committee decided, no, we're not going to do wish lists. We're going to do what benefits the entire county right now. And at that point in time, it was the SCBA's, the breathing apparatus. I think another time we did fund a tanker, because again, it was an immediate need that benefited the entire region of the county. But combing through the wish list items that, quite frankly, were better put in a budget, a yearly budget, or planned for in a yearly budget, seemed to make more sense to the group, assembled group, than asking for the entire county to fund one wish list item for one entity that didn't benefit everybody.
Also, when we started in 2016, there were a lot more fire departments.
Yeah.
Now most of them have unified under the fire protection district. So there's, I would argue that led to better planning for their budgets.
And they have to apply before July 1st? Okay.
Sorry. Counselor Henry?
Yeah, sorry, it's those Zoom things. So, going off of Scott's point, I mean, I'm looking at 2 and 5 and trying to square a circle. So, let's use the scuba or that device for example. If that's a one-time urgent emergency need purchase, and we're talking about a resource that usually has an end of life, right? Like that equipment will expire out for safety reasons. Like, does that then negate? If someone were to come back and say, look, we bought a piece of equipment one time use and now it's end of life and we have to dispose of it, so we're coming back to replace that urgent use, but it is now a, number 5, basically, I would read it as almost disqualifying it because it's not a news, it's using the source of funding to replace something that was an urgent one-time use. Does that strike folks as sort of
Let me give
circular?
you a little clarity on that. There had been a rule change, I want to say it was with OSHA, about how long the air tanks could actually be in service that caught a lot of the fire departments flat-footed, so they weren't able to budget ahead of time and buy X number per year to get there. And we had several providers, emergency service providers, that just simply did not have the tax base or the funding capabilities to get those SCBA's back in service. It caught everybody pretty quickly flat-footed that they couldn't afford to do the numbers they needed, so we funded as a county.
Okay, I hear that. I guess, and that's fine for that example. But yeah, it's the boots and suits problem of things that you purchase that are urgent for a moment that do have a shelf life, and then if it is a one-time purchase versus a something we wouldn't budget for routinely. And I mean, pandemic stuff falls in this category. If there are pharmaceuticals that have a shelf life that are past their use or authorized use. I don't want to conjure all the possible resources. I'm just trying to wrap my head around at what point does 5 get in the way of number 2 on this list if an agency were trying to use this resource. I might be alone on that, but it's okay.
Well, number 5 does say prefers.
Yeah. I mean, so it's almost, I mean, that seems like an admonition or a warning, like don't bother, but I hear what you're saying. It's velvet.
Whereas number
Prefers
2 is
the
more
way to
start.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of rules sometimes, and I haven't been on the committee for a long time, but sometimes you see rules and you're like, something happened, and that's why that's there.
It wouldn't be a rule if it wasn't, yes.
That's right.
I'm
But to
wondering,
the point that we've consolidated the fire protection district, I mean, that does resonate with me. I mean, we have fewer units
Yeah.
that are competing now, so that does change things slightly in my view.
just throwing out there that the county did, all of us, recently experience an emergency from the tornadoes. And I'm wondering if there is an application of funds that we would consider relative to expenses made around that response. I mean, would that be an appropriate? So it'd be things that had already been expended perhaps, or in preparation for a similar event in the future. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. It's terrible.
Well, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I'm kind of curious, Scott, Oldham, if you have some views on this. So, if we had a situation where we're not going to meet a threshold for state or federal disaster relief, right?
Mhm.
And yet we still expended resources locally, but we're not going to get reimbursed for those from a state or federal pool because the disaster wasn't large enough. If that would be something that would qualify, though, I'm trying to wrap my head around what that would be. I mean, overtime is one of those things, right? But that's not a tangible good.
Again, I can only speak to what we've funded in the past where we were,
Yeah.
from beginning, we never funded any personnel cost. Because those were recurring, and quite frankly, even in this instance, and I understand what you're saying, we would be providing monies 6 to 8 months after the fact for something that should have been absorbed in the budget some other way. Now, I think your point, though, is if we identified a piece of equipment that we needed that would benefit the entire county in a disaster, sure, let's talk about that. Did we need a crane? Did we need a this? Did we need a whatever else? But then the question you've got to ask yourself is, where does that asset belong? Where does it go? And does it fit within what we're funding? So again, would a crane be better purchased by city, county, or Ellettsville Highway Department because it would get used more than once every 20 years, hopefully never used? Or does it belong with the fire department where it just sits and does nothing for 15, 20 years? So, where is that capable? I can tell you from our most recent experience, thank God, there wasn't a substantial amount of equipment needed that was not already present in daily use.
This would be more like losing apparatus,
Right.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had something where you had a fire truck, again, pick one of them, 2 engines get destroyed. Yeah, that's an urgent need that benefits everybody. So I would say, yeah, let's absolutely fund that one. But that's kind of outside the purview of even the monies we have off of this.
Sure.
But just to carry that forward then, something that would, equipment-wise, enhance coordination and communication in a similar incident might be eligible.
Sure.
Yeah, didn't we fund new radios for some of the
We did.
township fire departments, so everybody had
And
the same
repeaters,
kind?
yes, and MDTs, yes. So that way throughout the entire county, everybody's functioning on the same system with the same capabilities. And in fact, I don't know that Bloomington City ever got any, they may have, but the outer line fire departments were equipped with repeaters as they got further and further away from the base station so that they could use the radio channels appropriately.
Yeah, that's a really good use. No, and again, being new to the committee, I'm getting an education, but yeah, the repeater purchase makes a lot of sense to me, so I understand that.
Oh, and that's paid off over the years several times.
Yeah, 100%.
Do we have guidance to provide potential applicants on the amount they should target in their requests?
Don't know that we ever had where we provided, we're gonna expend this or whatever else. Because again, anything we grant comes off the top of the entire PS lid. It comes second after dispatch.
In preparing for this meeting, I've not seen any document that provided guidance of that nature.
And
But
most
this
of
is my first PS Lit.
the time we've done this, the committee directed the purchase and paid for it directly rather than giving the money to the entity.
Yeah.
It was like the SCBA's, we bought in mass, and I don't remember who was dedicated to doing that, or the MDTs or the radio systems. That was money set at that point to dispatch to fund out of their line item.
Right.
So,
About the time they disband this committee, I'll understand how it works.
You're not giving me much hope for learning.
So is there any appetite to revise these guidelines or add anything to them?
So it's a confusion point that we don't think the agencies have an understanding of the array of things they could apply for, or is it really, because I mean, part of me, after hearing a little of this, is thinking about just how, I'm gonna talk law enforcement here for a second, but like how the NIMS or the National Incident Management System process would identify like a resource type list and say, look, the things that are on the resource list that typically fire EMS or first responders use, like that's the kind of stuff that would be eligible. Is there an appetite to create like an example list based on stuff that we know are resources that public safety might bring to us so we can wrap our heads around it? It doesn't seem abstract or folks. I mean, I'm okay with either way, having examples of things or just sticking with this is fine, especially if we might be adding more to this guideline and complicating it. But does anyone have an opinion about examples of things to maybe trigger some applications or not?
I guess I would be concerned if we make a list of examples, then we'll get a request for those things, even if they're not
Needed, sure.
needed or
urgent. Yeah.
pressing.
And, I mean, I think honestly, my questions are coming from a point of I'm still learning about the process, and most of the folks who would be applying probably are more familiar than I am with what would count and what would work in terms of the process.
How many qualified service providers are there now who could apply? Do we know? So there's the Monroe Fire Protection District, obviously. What? Maybe I'll rely on Deputy Chief Oldham.
And not knowing what, 3 maybe? 4?
So is Washington Township still have their own? No.
Has Benton actually fully come into the district yet? Or are they still pending? I know they were intending, but I don't know what their actual move-in date is. And then you have Bean Blossom Fire, Steinsville Fire, that's still out there on their own.
Is Steinsville Bean Blossom, is that the same thing?
Yes, they're currently in discussions with 2 parties that may result in some acquisition of services. So I don't really want to speak to that because it's still ongoing, but it's out there in the public that they are entertaining some things.
Oh, Richard Carter has joined us. Welcome, Mr. Carter. There are 4 Bloomington City, Ellisville Fire, Bean Blossom. Okay.
Perfect.
Of the fire department, yeah.
So
But then
2
it says
that
also
would be-
emergency medical service provider.
But again, when it talks about from a political subdivision, our emergency service medical provider is a private entity.
So they are not eligible.
They've never tried. I don't know that committee's ever answered that question.
Yeah, interesting.
it must be operated by or serve. Well, it serves.
No, it's not under contract.
Oh.
BIOS is not under contract to this county in any form or fashion.
Who?
Bloomington Hospital Ambulance Service. IU Health Hospital, sorry. It used to be, but no longer is.
Well, it says as defined by code, and so maybe there's, more to it than that.
Okay, so back to
Operated
the.
by or
sorry.
serve, a public subdivision, so, yeah, to your point, sorry, I'm catching up.
No worries.
So it wouldn't count as serving a subdivision because there's no agreement?
They would have to make a case, I would think.
We've never answered that question because they've never
They've
asked.
never applied.
Yeah,
Cross that bridge if we get to it.
I think that question's come up every year.
Shows how much I remember.
Well,
I ask it
yeah.
every year.
No, I mean, it's something we've discussed a lot, and we've never had to push it to the legal department because they've never said, hey, we'd like to
Right.
apply.
Yeah.
So just scratch the last 5 minutes of conversation from the tape? I'm just kidding.
I mean, I think it's an interesting discussion. You know, if we wanted to take BS-Lit money off the top and fund an ambulance service specific to the county, that would be different. But that's not something that I don't know we can even do by interlocal agreement, because this was designed for the PSAP, not for beyond that.
Mm-hmm. And it's going away soon. So.
Right.
Right.
So I'm hearing no suggestions to change our guidelines. Okay. Well, we can go to the public. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak about the application form or the guidelines for applicants? All right, seeing none, we will move on to schedule.
Would the committee then need to vote on the application and guidelines?
Oh. Yes,
And
perhaps we
if
should.
so, I have a proposed motion that you could consider. And
Yes,
that would
please.
be a motion to approve the document entitled Public Safety Local Income Tax Committee of Monroe County Local Income Tax Council Application and Guidelines, last revised June 13th, 2024, with the following changes: removing the paragraph at the top of page 2 and updating the dates and contact information within it.
Thank you, Ms. Lehner. Would anybody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the application and guidelines with a few revisions as discussed. Let's do a roll call. Councilmember Ruff,
Yes.
Councilmember Daley,
Yes.
Councilor Wiltz,
Yes.
Deputy Chief, oh, I should know.
It's
You're
okay.
here, roll.
It's all right, different
Town
roles,
Council
different.
Member Oldham,
Yes.
Councilor Henry,
Yes.
and Councilmember Rallo.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes.
And you?
Oh, and I vote yes. Sorry, forgot to call on myself. Okay, so now we can move on to a matter of schedule and trying to schedule our next meeting. So the deadline will be for the applications will be June 30th, which I believe is a Monday. So within a couple weeks of that date, we should try to schedule another meeting. By then, we will also have the central dispatch budget proposal. So maybe look at the week of July 14th. Is anybody going to be totally unavailable that week?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Definitely that Friday I'm totally unavailable.
Well, what about another Tuesday at noon on July 15th? Does that work for people? And for staff as well?
Tuesday, July 15th.
I'll give everybody a minute to look at their calendars.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
No, it doesn't.
Is it because of noon or Tuesday or
It's that day, it's Tuesday.
what about
because of
Monday the
Tuesday.
14th?
That
No?
wouldn't work.
Okay.
Sorry, Thursday the 17th?
That would work for me.
Thursday's actually the best day of the week for me, not that
Yeah, we can do that.
I'm the star of the show.
Yes, you are.
So the new proposal is Thursday, July 17th at noon. And for those online, those committee members online, feel free to chime in if that does not work.
That works for me, thanks.
It does? Okay.
It's fine.
Mr. Carter, does that, oh, gotcha. Just so I know. Very good. And it works for staff and
Yes.
clerk's office? Yay, we got a date! So, I don't know if we should schedule a third meeting. It'd probably better to schedule it in case we need it.
I agree.
So, What about the following Thursday, the 24th?
I'll be out of state.
I will also be out of state, actually. Actually. Oh, well, it's getting close then. If we're gonna make any changes, there's not a lot of time for the voting bodies to react.
It's my understanding that the reaction would come from city council primarily, right? Because of the way,
The votes are
Yeah.
distributed.
and it needs to be done by August 1st.
No, so if we propose a change in the proportion that goes to PSAP, then the Monroe County Tax Council, which is comprised of the bodies of the three governments, need to approve that change by September 1st. So, yeah, and since most of the votes, or a majority of the votes are with the city council, so if we met July 28th, would that be enough time? Looking at Ms. Lehner. And,
Potentially.
because we do have a meeting August 6th, but then, wait, August 6th and 13th? August 6th and 13th? No, only August 6th, and then
Yes.
that's it.
It's just the beginning of August.
That's the only meeting we have in August, because then we have our 2 weeks of budget hearings. Well, that would be cutting it close, but I don't see, unless we move the first meeting earlier, I don't see how to.
You could just set it, because we may not need it.
We may not need it.
Well, city council also has a regular session scheduled on July 30th. I don't know if that
So how does
makes a
July
difference.
28th look for everybody? It's a Monday. Somebody said Monday's bad. Right.
What time?
Well,
Oh.
I don't know. I guess we'll start with noon.
I couldn't make it for noon, well, unless I was able to do online, but I could make it for noon 30. I have a meeting that ends right at noon that Monday, so.
So how does 12:30 on July 28th look?
I may have to be remote for that,
Okay, but you would be available?
yes. Works for me.
Who said that?
Richard?
Okay, thank you. Does that work for everybody here in the room? Wonderful. And Mr. Henry,
He gave a thumbs up.
he did, okay, good.
Yeah, we're good.
Councilmember Piedmont.
Yes.
As an aside, we would need at least 4 committee members physically present to support people attending electronically,
Right, for
Just-
both of these.
as an FYI.
And no more than 2 virtual in a row.
Right, and, right, nobody can attend virtually more than 2 times in a row. Andy, did you have something?
No, I can be in person, I'm not there.
Okay. Is that would be sufficient for our meetings going forward, right?
I think so. May I add something also?
Yes, of course.
If a committee member wants to participate in the meeting electronically, it would help in terms of interpreting the open door law or identifying any issues. If you could send an email to me in advance, then I can identify any problems, potentially work those out before the meeting. Thank you.
And again, the 17th meeting was noon.
Yes.
July 17th at noon, July 28th at 12:30.
Right.
Here. I'll schedule it. Okay.
Somewhere in City Hall. Okay, there is an asterisk here, so we will take public comment on schedule. Does anybody in the public want to comment on what we've just scheduled? Don't see any hands going up. So we will move on to other business. Does anybody have any other business? I will just say oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Rollo, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a text, this is from Eric Ost, and he had issued 3 questions at the beginning.
Yes.
And perhaps the last one wasn't answered. Maybe it might not be answerable right now, but it reads, organizationally, how will this transition be collectively coordinated? This is post disbanding the, the committee and after the PS-Lit goes away. The post-transition revenue flows be collectively overseen on an ongoing basis. I'm kind of curious about that too. Jessica, do you have any thoughts on that, or is there going to be a fund like this that a committee will work to make decisions about, disbursements and so forth?
We don't have any direction from the state on what we're supposed to do. And I think then if we continue to not get any direction, I think we'll just have to figure it out here. We definitely haven't put the cart before the horse and made any decisions without talking to you guys first. No decisions have been made about how to do that.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for your attention on that.
I know Auditor Gregory had popped in for a minute, but it may be useful to have the auditor attend some of the meetings on that as we move forward. I mean, clearly the county's holding the funds that are dispersed to, as we talked about earlier, it may make sense to have her involved in that. And yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get a lot more guidance from SBOA and DLGF as we're trying to ramp down these types of committees as we split into our city and county lit. But I don't know if the auditors attended these types of meetings in the past, but it may make sense to have someone from our staff involved in this.
Yeah, thank you. That is a good idea. Okay, well, I just wanted to mention, so I was in Pittsburgh for a conference a few weeks ago, and we did a tour of the Allegheny County 911 Central Dispatch, and it was very interesting. And just to put our county in perspective, they have over 400 emergency service agencies in Allegheny County. It's the county where Pittsburgh is. Because in the state of Pennsylvania or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the emergency services have to be at the lowest governmental level. So every township has their own thing going on. They have over 100 different radio channels.
Oh my
So, so consider ourselves lucky that we are not in that position.
No kidding.
It was wild. Any other business? Any other comments from the public? I want to thank Mr. Ost for his comments. These are all very good questions to try to wrap our heads around as we transition out of the PS-Lit into the new system. But I see no other hands raised. So I think we can adjourn. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
you.